He called me his friend, while his fiancée wore the bracelet he said he lost. After using my apartment as his humble backstory and lying that I was his landlord, I took the mic and said, "Your promotion's built on my rent and his lies." I was still trying to process the fact that he walked into his own surprise promotion party holding another woman's hand when he did something that almost made my knees give out. He pulled her clothes, this polished, smiling woman in a pale blue dress, and introduced her to his entire department as his fiancée. Then he pointed at me, standing there like an idiot near the cake I paid for, and said, "And this is my landlord." Good guy helped me get on my feet. Landlord. I swear the word echoed so loudly I felt it bounce inside my ribs. I must have misheard. I had to have. Because this was the guy who'd lived in my apartment for almost a year, eating meals I cooked, sleeping in my bed, wearing the damn bracelet I gave him for our 1-year anniversary. The same bracelet that was now on her wrist, glinting under those stupid fluorescent lights. I didn't even remember walking toward him, but suddenly I was beside him, my voice low, shaky. "What the hell are you doing?" He barely turned his head. "Not now," he whispered without moving his smile. "We'll talk later." "No," I hissed. "We talk now." That's when he leaned closer, still smiling at the crowd like he was posing for a magazine cover, and said it so quietly I almost wished I hadn't heard it. "Don't ruin this for me. You're just a step in my career." A step. Like I was a rung on his ladder. Like the past year had been nothing more than free rent and homemade lasagna to him. Like the nights he cried in my arms about feeling invisible at work meant nothing. Like the plans we made, to move to a bigger place in Austin, to adopt a dog, to maybe marry someday, were nothing more than convenient lies he told to keep a roof over his head. I felt something crack inside me, not break, crack, slow and painful. He straightened up before I could respond, raising his glass to thank everyone for coming. His arm was around her waist again. She giggled at something he whispered. People clapped. I stood there choking on humiliation, betrayal, and a level of anger I didn't think my body could hold. I walked away because staying there felt like drowning. I pushed through the crowd, past people who didn't know me and now thought I was just the landlord, past the banner that said "Congrats, Tyler," in cheap gold letters, past the buffet table I had set up with his favorite foods because I thought I was celebrating my boyfriend. I ended up near the DJ booth, my heart pounding so loudly it felt like part of the song. The DJ looked at me like he wasn't sure whether to be concerned or amused. I didn't even know what I was going to do. My hands were shaking. My vision was blurry, angry, hot. And then I saw Tyler across the room. Smiling. Toasting, holding her hand the way he used to hold mine. Something inside me snapped into place. Not broken, not weak, something sharp. Without thinking, I reached out and grabbed the mic off the DJ's stand. He looked stunned, but I was already stepping forward, the mic heavy and cold in my hand. The speakers screeched for a second as I turned to face the crowd. And then I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Actually, there's something you all should know about Tyler." The room went dead silent. And I didn't stop. If you had told me a year ago that Tyler would introduce me as his landlord in front of his entire company, I would have laughed. Not because it was impossible, but because it was so far from who I thought he was. Or who he pretended to be. I met him last summer at a coffee shop in South Austin. It was one of those places where people pretend they're working, but are really just scrolling. I was editing a project on my laptop when he sat beside me, sweaty from the heat, asking if I had a charger he could borrow. He looked embarrassed, fumbling through his backpack like he expected his whole life to fall out in pieces. I remember thinking he looked like someone who'd had a rough day and didn't want to admit it. We talked, and somehow ended up on a walk around Zilker Park that lasted 2 hours. He told me he'd just moved from Lubbock, trying to start fresh, looking for a better job. He said Austin felt intimidating, expensive, fast. He said he didn't know anyone yet. I didn't know it then, but he was already planting the seeds of his humble, broke, self-made narrative, the one he would later perform like a script at his job. After 2 weeks of seeing each other almost every day, he told me his roommate situation fell apart. I offered my place temporarily because that's the kind of person I am. I help. I try to be decent. And he looked at me like I was saving him. He moved in 2 days later. At first it was good, simple. He cooked breakfasts, I handled dinners. We stayed up late talking about the future like two people who believed in one. He called me his anchor, his safe place, his partner. When he got hired at that tech company downtown, he said he wouldn't have made it without me. I believe now he meant that literally. Looking back, I can see it, how he shaped every story about himself to sound like he'd clawed his way out of tragedy. The broke guy who made it persona. The emotional vulnerability he used like currency. The way he soaked up sympathy from his coworkers whenever he mentioned his tiny apartment he shared with a strict landlord who cut him a break out of pity. I didn't know he'd been telling those stories until the party. I didn't know they saw me as some random guy who let him crash on a couch. I didn't know they didn't even know my name. The cracks started showing months earlier, I guess. Little things. He came home later. He guarded his phone. He stopped talking about our future and started talking only about his career, about playing things right, about knowing how to impress the right people. But he always made sure to be sweet enough to keep me from questioning it. A kiss on the forehead, a text at lunch, dinner reservations just because. He was good at knowing the exact minimum required to keep me stable and quiet. I didn't realize it was manipulation until I replayed every moment with fresh eyes. The bracelet was the worst of it. He lost it, or so he claimed. He looked devastated when he told me. I actually hugged him, telling him it was okay, that things get lost. I didn't know he'd handed it to someone else, someone he was apparently calling his fiancée. I guess that's when something changed in him completely. That was around when he started climbing at work. Promotions, projects, fancy meetings. Suddenly he was dressing nicer, speaking differently, acting like he belonged to a higher orbit. And I was just there, paying rent on an apartment he barely contributed to, buying groceries he ate, taking care of someone who was already walking away from me while pretending he wasn't. But nothing prepared me for what he whispered at that party. Nothing prepared me for the look in his eyes, the coldness, the calculation. Don't ruin this for me, you're just a step in my career. I replayed it over and over while holding that mic, the whole room staring at me, and I realized something. He didn't just betray me, he used me. And I wasn't done speaking. The silence after I grabbed that mic felt heavier than anything I'd ever carried. But before I actually said anything into it, before I blew up his whole carefully crafted life, I have to admit something. The weeks leading up to that party had been screaming at me. I just didn't want to listen. It started small, little things that didn't add up. Like how he suddenly started caring way too much about brand names. He used to shop clearance racks with me at Ross, joking about how we were humble kings. But then one day he came home with a $300 button-up and didn't even try to hide it. He said, "It's for work. You don't understand the culture." When I asked why he didn't tell me before spending that kind of money, he shrugged and said, "I don't need permission." That word, permission, sat in my chest for days. Then came the work events he never invited me to. At first, he said they were boring, just corporate nonsense, and I believed him. But the events got bigger, fancier. Rooftop happy hours. Team dinners at places where the steak cost more than my electric bill. Every time I gently asked if I could come, he gave excuses that sounded rehearsed. Not the right vibe. Plus ones only for senior employees. Next time, I promise. There was never a next time. He got distant in ways I didn't know how to articulate. He stopped kissing me goodbye in the morning. Stopped putting his phone down when we talked. Stopped asking about my day. Everything was about him, his workload, his boss, his future. I felt like an accessory in my own home. Then came the lie about working late. One night, around midnight, his coworker Mia messaged me, someone I'd talked to a few times when she came over for group hangouts. She asked if Tyler was okay. I said, "Yeah, he said he's working late." She replied, "We all left at 7. 7. He got home at 12:40 a.m. I remember sitting on the edge of the bed, the room dark except for the hallway light spilling in. I wanted to ask, I wanted to confront him. But when he walked in, tired-looking, tie loose, and said, "Long day," followed by a kiss on my forehead, I let it go. I hate that version of myself. The version that needed so badly to believe him that I abandoned myself in the process. The next escalation was unavoidable, though. He stopped letting me pick him up from work. He suddenly had extra meetings, every Thursday, always Thursday. He started showering the second he walked through the door. He kept checking his appearance in the mirror like he was auditioning for a role he thought I wasn't worth knowing about. And then there was his boss's daughter. I didn't know she existed. I didn't know she was attending his meetings. I didn't know she was the one he walked to her car after work, as a courtesy. I didn't know any of that, but I did notice how often he mentioned his boss, how impressed he seemed by everything the man said, how suddenly he cared about perception and professional image. It was like he was constructing a new version of himself brick by brick, and I was still holding the old house key. 3 days before the party, he asked me if we could lay low online. When I asked why, he said, "Work-related. It's better if people don't get the wrong impression." Wrong impression of what? Of us being together. I should have pushed harder. I should have forced him to answer. But he looked at me with those eyes, the same eyes that convinced me to let him move in, to trust him, to love him, and I caved. By the time the party came around, I think some part of me already knew something was broken beyond repair. But not even in my worst nightmares did I imagine walking into a room full of strangers and hearing him introduce the woman next to him as his fiancée. I didn't know the half of it yet, not the real reason behind it, not the first twist that was about to split everything open, not what he'd been hiding from both of us. But I was inches away from the microphone, the whole room watching, and every lie he'd told was lighting a fuse inside me I could no longer ignore. And the explosion was coming. The thing about speaking into a microphone in a room full of strangers is that every second stretches. You feel the weight of every inhale, every heartbeat, every eye narrowing at you like you're about to start a fire they can't stop. But before I opened my mouth, before I blasted his lies open, she spoke. The woman, his so-called fiancée, stepped forward with this polite, confused smile and said, "Oh, you must be the landlord Tyler told us about." She even reached out her hand like she was doing me a favor. I didn't shake it. I just stared at the bracelet on her wrist, the one I'd spent hours choosing, engraving, wrapping. The one he said he lost on the bus. The one she now casually touched like it was hers. Her face fell a little. "Is something wrong?" Tyler rushed over, panic flashing in his eyes. "Babe, he gets nervous around crowds," he said quickly, to her, about me. Then he turned his head slightly toward me and muttered, "Put the mic down." I didn't. I lifted it. And that's when the first twist hit, one I didn't see coming even after everything he'd already done. His boss, Richard, the senior-level executive Tyler worshipped, stepped forward and said loudly, "Tyler, son, is there something you didn't tell us?" The room shifted. People murmured, phones came out, Tyler froze. "What do you mean?" Richard pointed at the bracelet. "Where did she get that?" She looked down at it, confused. "You gave it to me. You said it belonged to your mother." My stomach dropped so fast I felt dizzy. His mother. He told her it was his mother's bracelet. He told me he lost it on a bus. Tyler plastered on a shaky smile. "Yeah, it was my mom's." I must have forgotten to mention. "No," Richard cut in sharply. "It wasn't." Everyone went silent. Richard stepped closer. "That bracelet, I bought that bracelet for my wife. In 2014. You could feel the air get sucked out of the room. The fiancé, who wasn't a fiancé, stared at Tyler like he'd just turned into something inhuman. "What do you mean your dad bought this?" "You told me." "He's not your dad," I said before I could stop myself. She blinked at me. "What?" And then the real reveal landed, heavy, ugly, impossible to ignore. Richard looked at Tyler, jaw tight. "You told her I was your father?" I watched Tyler crumble. He couldn't hide it anymore. His face twisted in a way I'd never seen, panicked, cornered, feral. Listen, it's complicated," he started. "No," Richard barked. "It's simple. You have been lying about your background since the day you interviewed. You told everyone here you grew up poor, without family, struggling. You said you were self-made. You even turned down the relocation stipend because you said you'd feel guilty taking it." My mouth fell open. Relocation stipend? He told me he couldn't afford first and last month's rent, which is why he needed just a little help. Richard continued, voice rising. "You told us you lived in a shoebox apartment being helped by some grumpy landlord who pitied you because you'd been homeless." Homeless. I felt cold all over. He had twisted me, my home, our life, into some pity narrative to make himself look like a scrappy underdog. And he told this rich girl he was her boss's secret son. What kind of sociopath, the fiancé, or whatever she was, backed away like he was poison? "You lied about everything." Tyler reached for her. "No, babe, listen." She jerked away so hard her bracelet nearly slipped off. "Don't touch me." Richard turned to security. Security, get him out of here, he's done. Tyler panicked. No, no, please, this is all a misunderstanding. Then he turned on me. You did this, he hissed. You couldn't let me win. You jealous, bitter. But I spoke straight into the mic before he could finish. No, Tyler, you did this to yourself. The room exploded into noise, gasps, whispers, people recording, but none of that mattered. Because the first twist had finally cracked everything open, and Tyler was only just starting to fall. They dragged Tyler out of that party like he was a drunk crashing a wedding, not the golden boy who'd been promoted an hour earlier. People moved out of the way fast, some shocked, some whispering, some recording like they were watching a live-action scandal unravel in front of them. But I didn't feel triumphant. Not yet. I felt unfinished. Because even after all that, after being exposed, after his lies collapsed in on themselves, Tyler looked back at me with pure hatred. Not guilt, not fear, hatred, like I was the one who had betrayed him. Like I'd ruined something he believed he deserved. That look stayed with me long after the party ended, and the managers tried to smooth things over like a PR emergency. It stayed with me as I got in my car, as I drove home alone, as I walked into the apartment he still technically lived in. His stuff was everywhere. His shoes, his jacket on the couch, his toothbrush by the sink, his clothes in the hamper, his stupid cologne lingering in the hallway. Every reminder felt like a hand pressing on a bruise. I sat on the floor of the living room, surrounded by evidence of who I thought he was, the version he fed me, the version I loved, and I felt this deep, hollow shame. Not for what happened, for how long I let myself ignore the signs, but shame isn't the thing that kept me on that floor. Anger did, slow, heavy, calculated, because now I knew the truth. Tyler didn't just lie to me. He didn't cheat in the normal, painful human way. He built an alternate version of himself and used me, my home, my kindness, my love as props. And not only that, he used those lies to move up in his job, to date a wealthy woman, to look like a humble, hardworking success story. He didn't accidentally step on me while climbing. He chose to, and he warned me not to ruin it for him because he truly believed I wouldn't fight back. That assumption was about to be the biggest mistake of his life. The planning phase didn't come all at once, but it started when I opened his laptop. He'd left it on the bed that morning, probably in a rush. His password used to be the date we met. He changed it months ago. But he had one weakness. He reused numbers. Specifically, the PIN to unlock his phone, which I'd seen enough times to memorize no matter how much he tried to hide it. When the laptop clicked open, I expected to feel guilty. I didn't. What I found made any leftover guilt evaporate. There were emails to his boss, the same man who got him thrown out, where Tyler bragged about his hard upbringing and having no family. There were copies of forms he'd falsified about his address, claiming he lived in a rundown studio he never set foot in. There were screenshots of texts between him and the boss's daughter, dating back further than I would have guessed. But that wasn't the worst. The worst was the folder labeled Future. Inside were notes organized, planned, almost scripted, about how he intended to marry her within a year and use the connection to get into senior management. And right beneath that a list titled, Breakaway Plan. Breakaway from who? Me, bullet points, cold as knives. Transition out without drama. Cut contact gradually. If he gets emotional, right arrow, say it's work stress. Move stuff out slowly. No photos together. Don't post. Keep him stable until I get promoted. Keep him stable. Like I was livestock. I sat there staring at those notes, shaking not from sadness anymore, but from something sharper. This wasn't just betrayal. It was strategy. And if Tyler wanted strategy, he picked the wrong opponent. Because now that I knew what he'd planned for me, I was about to plan something of my own. And unlike him, I wasn't sloppy, or arrogant, or cruel for sport. My revenge wouldn't be loud. Not at first. It would be clean, careful, thorough, and it would hit him exactly where he never expected. I thought finding that breakaway plan folder would be the worst of it. I thought that was the final punch, the truth behind his lies, the proof that he never loved me, the outline of how he planned to erase me once he was done using me. I was wrong. The real twist didn't come from his laptop. It came from my phone. That same night, around 1:30 a.m., I got a text from an unknown number. Unknown. Is this the person who lives with Tyler? For a second, I froze. I didn't know if it was one of his coworkers, his girlfriend, or someone trying to figure out what happened at the party. Against my better judgment, I answered, "Emmy, who is this?" A few seconds later, they replied, "Unknown, my name is Daniel. I'm Tyler's brother." I swear I didn't breathe for a full 10 seconds. Brother. Tyler told everyone he had no family. Told me he had no family. Told his job he had no family. And yet here was a man claiming to be his brother. I didn't respond immediately. I clicked on the number, searched online. I didn't recognize the name. But the area code matched Tyler's hometown. And the last name, same as Tyler's. My heart started pounding as I typed, "M.E." Tyler said he was an only child. The 3 dots popped up, hesitated, and then, "Daniel, he's not." There are 5 of us. 5. I didn't know what to do with that. My hands shook as I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the messages like they were written in another language. I finally typed again, "M.E., why are you contacting me? How did you get my number?" The reply came fast, "Daniel, he listed you as his emergency contact. You're the only name on file, emergency contact." So he could use my address as part of his broke underdog story, but he trusted me enough to list me as the person to call if he got hurt. Or maybe that too was strategic. Before I could spiral, another message came through, "Daniel, he's been lying to you, to all of us. We've been trying to find him for months." I didn't know how to respond. I just stared at the words until they blurred. Then the phone vibrated again. This time it was a photo. A family photo, worn, sun-bleached, edges frayed. 5 kids, 2 parents, a backyard, and there he was, Tyler. Younger, thinner, but unmistakable. Standing between 2 brothers and a sister, all of them smiling. He didn't look poor. He didn't look abandoned. He didn't look anything like the story he'd sold everyone. My stomach tightened. Then came another message, "Daniel, he disappeared right after our dad died. He cleaned out the family account and cut contact. Our mom has been sick. She's been asking for him." I felt cold all over. Not angry, not betrayed, sick. Because this wasn't a man who lied to survive or out of insecurity. This was someone who shed people like old skins when they stopped being useful. Me, his coworkers, his girlfriend, his family, his sick mother. And then Daniel sent one last message. "Daniel, he always does this. He finds someone to latch onto, uses them, then leaves before the damage catches up. I'm warning you, if he's been living with you, he has a plan for you too. He always has a plan." My hands went numb. Without thinking, I texted back, "Me, he did. But it fell apart tonight." Daniel replied, "Daniel, good. Then you need to know something else. He's been collecting things, documents, details about you. He did that with us too before he left. Check everywhere he hides stuff. You'll know what I mean when you find it. And then, Daniel, be careful. He's not who you think he is. He never has been." I stared at that final message for a long time, heart pounding, feeling something colder grow inside me. Tyler wasn't just ambitious, wasn't just manipulative, wasn't just a liar. He was a pattern, a predator of opportunity, and if Daniel was right, I hadn't even uncovered everything yet. The first folder on his laptop wasn't the whole plan. There was more, hidden, somewhere in my home, and now I was going to find it. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a minute. I spent hours walking through the apartment like I was searching for a ghost, opening drawers, checking cabinets, pulling boxes from closets. I kept replaying Daniel's words. "He's been collecting things, documents, details about you." By 4 a.m., the apartment looked like a crime scene, stuff scattered everywhere, empty shelves, piles of receipts and papers. Nothing made sense. Nothing looked like a hidden stash. I was kneeling on the floor in the bedroom when I saw it. A loose floorboard. It wasn't obvious, wouldn't have been noticeable if the corner of the rug hadn't folded back earlier. But once I saw the slight shift in the wood, I knew. My stomach knotted. I pried it up with a screwdriver. And there it was. A small black zip-up binder. The kind someone might use for coupons or baseball cards. Except when I unzipped it, I realized exactly what Daniel meant. Tyler had been collecting information. About me, not just basic stuff. Not just bills or paperwork we shared. He had copies of my lease, my driver's license, my social security card, front and back, my birth certificate, old pay stubs, medical insurance numbers, even a printout of my bank routing number. I felt the room tilt. Underneath the documents was a notebook, lined paper, written in his neat, careful handwriting. The first page made my skin crawl. Long-term utilization plan, my full name. Utilization. Not partner, not boyfriend, not friend, not love, not even person. Utilization. My hands shook as I turned the page. He had written bullet points: cold, clinical, emotionless. Reliable housing source. Stable emotional provider. Predictable routine equals low risk. Low likelihood of confrontation. Useful for income cushioning. Good reputation, right arrow, no suspicion. I had to stop reading for a second. My throat was tight, my eyes stung. I felt sick in a way I'd never felt before, not betrayed, not heartbroken, dehumanized. I kept reading because I had to. On the third page, the tone shifted from observation to strategy, his plan for the future, written like a business proposal. Maintain relationship until career established. Minimize emotional involvement to avoid complications. Detach gradually to prevent dramatic reactions. Secure new relationship with advantageous partner. Exit once financially and socially optimized. Financially. Socially optimized, like I was a stepping stone, a financial buffer, a temporary convenience. And then I found the worst page, a page titled, Why It Works. I swear I stopped breathing. He wrote, people like him want to feel needed. They confuse dependency with love. Give them small affection equals they give back tenfold. He won't see the signs because he assumes others love like he does. He believes in loyalty can be exploited. He will always try to fix things instead of leaving. I read that page 5 times. It felt like someone had peeled me open and pinned my insides to a bulletin board. He didn't just study me, he dissected me, understood exactly how I loved, how I trusted, how I bonded. And he used every single piece of that to build a story where he came out on top. This wasn't accidental cruelty. This wasn't insecurity or fear or trauma. This was intentional, calculated. He didn't lie because he was scared. He lied because it was useful. He didn't leave his family because they hurt him. He left because they weren't useful anymore. And he planned, precisely planned, to do the same thing to me. Daniel wasn't warning me about a bad boyfriend. He was warning me about a person who views every human being as a resource to extract. The chilling reason behind everything, the lies, the manipulation, the fake engagement, the fake sob stories, the fake identity, was simple. Tyler didn't love people. He leveraged them. And once I understood that, something inside me hardened. I wasn't dealing with a messy liar. I was dealing with someone who built his entire life on using people until they had nothing left to give. And he chose the wrong person to underestimate, because he thought I wouldn't fight back. But I was done being his utilization plan. It was time for mine. The morning after I found the binder, the apartment felt different. Not like a home, more like a lab where I'd been studied without knowing it. Every photo on the wall, every blanket on the couch, every dirty dish in the sink suddenly felt like evidence in a case I never knew I was part of. I wasn't scared anymore. I was focused. Tyler had spent months building a version of himself out of lies, manipulation, and stolen narratives. And for a while, he actually believed he could get away with it. He thought people like me didn't fight back. He thought kindness meant weakness. He thought loyalty meant silence. So my revenge started with something simple. I took everything he used against me and turned it against him. The first thing I did was call Daniel. He answered on the second ring, breath shaky like he'd been waiting. I found the binder, I said. He let out a long exhale. Yeah, he did the same thing to us. Memorized everyone's weaknesses. Collected anything he could use. What do you want to do with him? I asked. There was a pause. Expose him, Daniel said. He's hurt too many people, but you're the one he used last. It should be your call. And I already knew what I wanted. I spent the next 8 hours gathering everything. Photos of the binder, screenshots of his notes, copies of the documents he stole, emails where he lied to his job, the text messages, the fake address forms, his scripted, self-made sob story, his plans for the boss's daughter, his plans for me. I organized it into a single, clean folder titled, Who Tyler Really Is. Then I drafted an email. Short, direct, no emotion. I sent it to his boss HR, every manager he lied to, the boss's daughter, his entire team, and finally his mother and siblings. I hit send. 5 minutes later, my phone blew up. The boss's daughter sent one message. Thank you, I'm so sorry, and I'll be returning the bracelet. His boss responded with, We've already terminated him. But this is unbelievable. His coworkers, some apologized, some cursed him out. Some said they always sensed something off. But the message that stayed with me came from Daniel. You just saved a lot of people from becoming his next step. Thank you. That should have been the end of it. But revenge isn't clean. It's never just one action. Tyler wasn't the type to disappear quietly. He came home that night, slamming the door open, red-faced, sweating, shaking with rage. "What did you do?" he snapped, stepping toward me like he thought he still had power. I didn't stand up, I didn't flinch. I just pointed at the binder on the table. "It's over," I said. "Everyone knows." He froze when he saw the binder was open, when he realized I'd read every word he wrote about me like I was a project. "You don't understand," he tried. "That's not those notes were, it's not what you think." "No," I said quietly. "It's exactly what I think." He tried to reach for the binder, but I pushed it off the table. Papers scattered across the floor, his handwriting everywhere, proof of exactly who he was. And then I said the one thing he never expected. "You have 10 minutes to get your things out or I'll call the police and tell them you've been stealing my documents." He broke then, not into tears, but into pure, ugly panic. He grabbed whatever he could fit into a backpack and left the rest behind. When he stormed out, he looked back at me like he expected me to beg or apologize or crumble. I didn't. I locked the door behind him. And for the first time in months, maybe years, the apartment felt like it belonged to me again. The next morning, I filed a formal identity theft report, just in case. I changed my locks, changed my passwords, canceled my cards, called my bank, told my landlord. Tyler didn't call, didn't text, didn't try to come back. He vanished the same way he'd vanished from his family years ago. Only this time, he didn't slip away quietly. I made sure of that. My reputation stayed intact. His, ruined completely, publicly, permanently. And as for the binder, I burned it in the courtyard grill behind my building. Watched every page curl, blacken, and disappear into ash. When the last flame died, I whispered one final line to the air, not for him, but for myself. "Thanks for underestimating me." Because that, more than anything, was his last mistake.